Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. The editor of Quorum Report, our good friend Scott Braddock, on with us this morning. Mr. Braddock, how are you?
Mr. Hasty, I'm well. How are you?
Doing well. People, we've got in the Don't Bloomberg My Texas, because Michael Bloomberg is, I guess he came to Texas over the weekend, and he's aiming to turn Texas blue.
Oh, everybody's aiming to turn Texas blue. I think parts of Texas are going to be blue and parts of Texas are going to be redder than they've ever been before. I was talking to a friend in Houston this morning about the impeachment hearings that you were just talking about. Look, it's taken away from some folks' daytime television watching, I guess. This is an expedited situation. I mean, people are saying, well, get it over with. Well, that's really what they're trying to do. I mean, You do have to move through a process if you're going to do this stuff, although it's interesting. The Constitution says that the House has the sole power of impeachment, which means that not only is the House the only entity that can do it, it also means they get to decide how they do it. And then it says, on top of that, that the Senate has the sole power to try the case, right, to have the trial, which means the same thing. It's the only entity that can do it, and they get to decide how. So do the Republicans, once they get the articles of impeachment sent over to the Senate, which it looks like it's on track for that to happen, how quick do they want to move? Do they want to go really fast? I mean, do they want to have basically a quick vote that says we're dismissing this is out of here? I didn't know this until last week, Chad, and this is how pivotal, and really it's just up to the legislative branch how all this works. When the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court is presiding over the trial in the Senate, which is what happens, the Chief Justice comes in, sits there, and makes rulings on different things, do certain people have to testify or whatever. If the Senate doesn't agree with a ruling that he makes in the moment, they can just vote to overturn him right there. So it really is up to them. So do they want to drag it out, or do they want to end it quickly? I get the sense with the Democrats that what they want to do is make this one of the boxes that they have checked going into 2020 to get this done. And they want the campaign to be about this, but also about other things, too. Remember, if you poll the Democratic voters out there, the things that they really care about, if you say, what are your top issues, those things are things like health care for everyone, Medicare for all, and whether that's the right path to take on that, climate change and other things like that. There is the sort of base of the Democratic Party that's very interested in impeachment. And you got to think a lot of these Democrats, we watch nasty Republican primaries around here, Chad. They have nasty Democratic primaries in some other places around the country. Yeah. And of course, they've got, from their far left, a lot of pressure to go ahead and impeach the president. They'd like to check this box not only for that November election, where it may move the votes with some people in some key states, but also in primaries, too. A lot of these incumbent Democrats don't even want the question asked. Yeah, we voted on that. We moved it over, and the Senate rejected it.
What do you make of Michael Bloomberg coming to the state of Texas?
I saw that he was campaigning in Plano. I didn't watch it all that closely, but I think he was saying a lot of the same things that he's saying all over the place. Bloomberg, pretty progressive guy, quote unquote. There's an argument about how progressive, and again, it's a Democratic primary, so they all try to appear as liberal as they can. Although it is interesting to see Biden talking about the idea that AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, even though she's been sort of the darling of national media, that's not really where the energy of the Democratic Party is, in that far left lane. Bloomberg, it's fascinating. He's spending so much money all over the country. This is a guy who has the cash to pretty much run as much television advertising as he wants. I saw that the initial ad buy in Texas alone was $3 million here just in the last couple of weeks. They were going up on television in Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, here in Austin, San Antonio, and elsewhere. And you know what Bloomberg may do for the Democrats is soften up Trump, because all of these folks, they're really aiming their sights not so much at each other, but at President Trump, and Bloomberg really doing that. I mean, all of them are sort of already running like they're the one who would be running against Trump, because they want to make that argument. I mean, the number one thing for Democratic voters, according to all the polls, is they want to see somebody who can beat Trump. Now, what that means, who knows? I continue to think that it's sort of ridiculous to have so many far-left candidates running in the Democratic Party, because President Trump, by no measure, is a sort of traditional conservative. And so if he's not, and you're trying to put out a fire, do you show up with gasoline to put out the fire? No, I mean, they're showing up with the exact wrong thing to take on Trump if he's not a traditional conservative, but they're showing up with far left liberals who want to take him on.
Yeah.
You would think it'd be something else that would be successful in moving voters back into the Democratic column. And think about where the election was actually won. And this is why this whole thing with impeachment, you hear a lot of analysis on television about the merits of the case. Is President Trump guilty of this or not? I won't get into that today because it doesn't matter for the political analysis. This is all a political and academic exercise because, as you said, the House is going to probably vote to impeach. The Senate's probably going to vote to not remove him, to dismiss this thing. And so then all that matters is how those individual senators and congressmen voted, whether they're up for re-election or not, and do the voters in those states that President Trump flipped from Democratic to Republican, particularly in the industrial Midwest, do the voters there agree that he should be removed from office, given the things that have unfolded since he took office? Remember, Chad, where the president really made the difference and where he won the election was to go in and convince a lot of people who had voted for Barack Obama to vote for him.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing about those people. They have demonstrated the ability to change their minds. I mean, we're so polarized in this country that we are sort of ceding our power to a smaller and smaller sliver of the electorate all the time. I mean, have you met anybody who voted for Obama and then voted for Trump?
I don't believe so.
You're right. So you look around here, and in Lubbock, for example, I would imagine the president probably enjoys popularity and would probably be reelected in that area, probably around 75-80%, something like that. In a place like Houston, it could be the exact opposite, where 70% are going against Trump. And so those places are just fascinating to me, like Wisconsin, like Pennsylvania, et cetera, where there are people who had said, look, I went with Obama. I thought he was going to help me out in my situation. That didn't happen. So I'm going to give Trump a try.
Yeah.
And for a lot of those folks, the economic news hasn't been as good in some of those places. So I wonder if they might say the same thing next time. They might go, well, I gave Trump a try. Now I'm going to try somebody else.
It all hinges on who the Democrat nominee is going to be. I think if it's someone who's on the very, 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 very far left, who wants to socialize everything, I think they're going to have a very hard sell in many of those states that you were just talking about. Let's talk about some other news in Texas, and this one sprung up over the weekend. The Galveston County GOP chair resigned over the weekend.
Yeah, this is an interesting situation where you had a text message that came that was made public in which the Galveston County Republican Party chair had used what appeared to be a racial slur. She said it was a typo originally, although I don't know what she would have been trying to write about this person. SREC member, State Republican Executive Committee member J.T. Edwards from Galveston County is African American. He's also a military veteran and was a housing commissioner down in Galveston County. He's somebody who is very outspoken. He was one of the speaker, Dennis Bonin's biggest defenders, at least before the audio was released of the meeting with Michael Quinn Sullivan earlier this year. There was some discussion about why he doesn't have a real job, why he doesn't work, and all this sort of stuff. And the Republican chair had responded that he's a typical blank. I'll leave it that way for the radio. There was immediate backlash. Governor Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, the Republican Party of Texas chairman, James Dickey, and others. And then this weekend I saw actually a letter sent to me on Saturday night, I guess, from some precinct chairs in Galveston County, some Republicans who had said this chair needs to go. It's not the first sort of race-fueled controversy in Southeast Texas over the last couple of weeks. Last week, we also saw a state representative from Sugar Land, Rick Miller, have to end his political career over saying some unkind things about Asian Americans. He had said that there were Republican, and this is all within the Republican Party, Chad, both in Galveston and in Fort Bend counties. And
the governor got involved in both of those, right?
Yeah, the governor had endorsed Rick Miller, who's the state rep from Sugar Land. He had endorsed him. He pulled his endorsement as soon as these comments came to light. That he had said that Miller had said that some of the candidates who are running against him in the Republican primary are only running because they are Asian and because they may think that an Asian has a better shot of winning that seat in the Texas House in 2020. Chad, he might have been able to get away with that comment if he had just left it at that and maybe had said, look, this is a very ethnically diverse area. In fact, Fort Bend County is now the most ethnically diverse county in the United States and has a huge, compared to other places, has a huge Asian population. And so maybe an Asian Republican would have a better chance of the seat. But then he had to also say, he didn't have to, he did also say that he, as a white man, thought that it was sort of racist that they were running against him, Asians wanting to take his Republican nomination. So Miller eventually, within 48 hours after that story was in the newspaper, he had said he would not seek re-election. He said that his comments were inappropriate, and so he withdrew.
Scott, let me ask you something. And because I've seen a little bit, and I haven't tweeted about either of those news stories just because it's whatever. But it's I've seen
some. You could get away with saying it's not local. It's one of one that happened while I was out of town, I wasn't paying attention. But I have noticed on Twitter that there are some people who are asking the question. The governor's gotten involved in both of these stories dealing with Republicans. Yeah. And he has called on them to resign, I believe, in both of those cases. Yeah. But he hasn't gotten involved with the lawmaker who was caught with a little bit of cocaine falling out of his pocket and calling for him to resign. Is that an issue? Is there a question why the governor and lieutenant governor and others haven't called for Poncho Nevarez to completely because I haven't seen that. It was a news story for a day or two, and then it just completely disappeared. Interesting question. I think that they probably do think that Abbott and Patrick would think that they do have more sway within the Republican Party to tell somebody that they ought to quit. The governor is no question the most popular Republican office holder in the state, and probably the most popular office holder in the state. So when he endorses somebody that carries some weight, and when he tells somebody they ought to quit within the GOP, that carries some weight. I do think it's fascinating that the Speaker of the House, who's still there, even though he's been, quote unquote, disgraced because of his own scandal, the Speaker says nothing about whether one of his own chairmen, not a partisan thing, but he is the person who put Nevarez in that position because the Speaker does choose the chairman. And the Speaker, as is tradition in Texas, chooses both Republicans and Democrats for those important positions as chairman. The Speaker has said nothing like Nevarez ought to quit. In fact, the opposite. When some Republican chairman in the House requested what you talked about there, requested that Nevarez step aside, Bonin argued with him. He said, I don't have the ability to do that. I don't have the ability to remove someone as chairman, and there's some question about that, actually some debate about whether he does have the authority to do that. But as one Republican chairman pointed out to us at quorumreport.com, if the Speaker was to say that here you have a chairman who's accused of, and by the way, is on tape, dropping this envelope with cocaine in it, if the Speaker was to say that he ought to quit, regardless of whether he has the authority, I don't think almost anybody would argue with him. If the Speaker was to say he ought to step aside, just about everybody would agree. And in fact, this Republican chairman went even further and said if Bonin went ahead and removed him, he can't imagine anybody fighting him about it because here you have somebody who has taken responsibility for the fact that he did have cocaine with him, which is a felony.
I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Here we go.
Yeah, I'm going to put. How many years has Poncho Nevarez been an elected official, I guess, state rep?
He would be entering his fifth term, I believe, so he's going into 10 years.
Okay. So, I mean, is he, let's say, because when you retire from the Texas House, after a certain number of years, you're going to get some pay.
That's right.
Is he fully vested in that?
I believe at the end of this term he would be. Let me double check that for you, and I'll get an answer.
Could that be a reason why he wouldn't resign?
It could be, yes, sir.
Okay.
Anytime, absolutely. Anytime. It's a good question because anytime somebody doesn't immediately resign from the legislature when there is some sort of controversy or even a crime that's been committed or allegedly has been committed, that's one of the first questions people ask. Are they still eligible for their pension? Which
yes.
In most cases they would be. Yeah.
Okay. I was just thinking. I was just thinking out loud here because
sure.
That may be that's an awfully, if you're a lawmaker, that's an awfully good reason to hold on.
Hey, man, they like that mailbox money.
Yes, they do.
Well, I will say for sure that the timing of, for example, Jonathan Stickland's retirement does coincide with that.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Which is fine. He's entitled to that.
Absolutely. Okay, let's say, Scott, we're running out of time, man. I know we had a lot more to get to. Tell folks what they can find at quorumreport.com today.
We will be looking closely for any surprises when it comes to the filing deadline.
Yes.
6 p.m. tonight. Those who really want to, go ahead and put up instead of shut up. If they want to run for office, today is the day. And of course, maybe I'll get to stop answering the question about whether Beto is going to, get into the Senate race. If he didn't put his name on the ballot by this evening, that's all over.
That question will be dead in less than 24 hours, Scott.
If you go to quorumreport.com and you sign up for the free email alerts, I'm going to make this prediction that we won't email you that Beto has gotten into the race. Although, if he does, we'll let you know that. It's all at quorumreport.com. You can sign up for the free email alerts there at quorumreport.com. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate it. That's Scott Braddock, editor, Quorum Report, Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.